Hola, mis amigos. Welcome to Spain. If it's Thursday, must be Granada, and that is where we are today. A bit asleep, so my face is a little bit puffy and I look a little bit different, but don't worry about me, I'm fine. It is 5:45 here in Spain. We're getting ready to go out and join the paseo and walk around and see what's shaking in town. Let me tell you, if it's not on your bucket list, Granada needs to go on your bucket list. Just a few blocks away from here is the tomb, the last repose of the most Catholic monarchs, Isabel and Fernando, Isabel of Castile and Fernando of Aragon. You've heard of them before. Queen Isabella, as we call her in the U.S., is the monarch who financed Christopher Columbus, in his journey to the New World. In fact, she approved that journey right here in this city. There's a large statue that commemorates it. If you follow me on Facebook, then you'll probably see that at some point during the day, either from me or from Lori. Lori's asleep in the other room and listening to me. Isn't that exciting? And I don't have anything pretty to look at in the background because this lovely little apartment is all white and pretty stark. It's perfect though, and we love it here. So let's talk a little bit about Isabella of Spain. She was born in 1451. Her father was King Juan II of Castile, and her mother was from Portugal. Her name was also Isabel. They did that a lot. Isabel was her mother. Isabel, I think, was her grandmother, and Isabel was also her daughter. It sounds pretty confusing to me. She lived away from court. She was sent away from court after her father died. After her father died, and her half brother Enrique became king. She lived in a town called Arevalo, which is about kind of northwest of Spain, of Madrid. And Madrid's about dead center in the Iberian Peninsula, to give you an idea of where that happened. She stayed there and was trained by her mother and her grandmother. She learned all the womanly arts, how to knit and how to embroider and how to do petit point and how to speak languages, although she didn't learn Latin until she was an adult, and she did that after she became queen so that she could understand what was being said and what was written without having someone to translate them. You can understand why as queen you might want to have an idea how that worked. At 10, she moved back to court. The court was a wicked place, and Isabella already was a very devout Catholic woman. In fact, it was her devotion to God that caused her to want to reunite all of Spain under one religion, and some of her actions in her life today we would consider to be distasteful. Back to young Isabella. She and her brother both were moved back to court. And of course, when you have children who are in court and who potentially have the power to become the monarch, there are many people who want to use them. They particularly wanted to use her brother. They put him up as a pretender, and they went to war and fought King Enrique in order to put Alfonso, Isabel's brother, on the throne. When he was 14, Alfonso was 14, he died. There has been some speculation that perhaps he was even poisoned, although it could have also been plague. Since he was the only one who died, I'm thinking maybe not plague, maybe poison. And then, when Isabella was 19, she had decided and had gained approval to marry only who she approved of. That was unheard of at the time because most princesses were married off to whomever was the most convenient and would give them the best alliances. But she had refused to do that. In fact, she married Ferdinand, who was also her cousin. He was from Aragon, at 19 years old without the king's permission. It was a big deal. But they were married, and they had 5 children together. The first child was Isabella, that daughter. There was a son. And then there were several other daughters. The last daughter was Catherine. You've heard of her too. Catherine of Aragon was the first wife of Henry VIII. After Isabella and Ferdinand married, a few years later, Enrique died, and she was the heir to the throne. Ferdinand wasn't there when Enrique died. She was in Segovia, which also is northwest of Madrid, but not exactly where Arevalo is, obviously. She had herself crowned queen without him being there. He was furious because he wanted to rule with her, but she was really the one who was the heir, and she was the one who was the powerhouse. She's the one who had the power. She was a great negotiator. She spent a lot of time riding throughout Spain and drawing up support for them and their wars. Ferdinand could not do that. He could fight them, but he was not the negotiator. He was not the diplomat. She also was instrumental in funding their army and making sure that the army had food, had the material that it needed. She was their quartermaster. Quite a woman. She had her own mind, and it was a good one. One of the things that Isabella did that many people frown upon now was the Inquisition. And she had been told by her religious advisors that there were a lot of conversos in Spain who were no longer acting like Christians, who were acting like Christians on the surface and acting like Jews in private. And a converso had at some point earlier in the history of Spain become a Christian under duress for purposes of just an ease of life. There had been many, many Jews in Spain. There continued to be many Jews in Spain. But for some reason, everybody should be Catholic. They were worried, the kings and queens were worried that these Jews would not go to heaven, that people in their realm would not go to heaven. And they insisted that they convert. Obviously, that was a difficult situation for a lot of folks. And I'm sure that there were some who converted for convenience sake and did continue to practice their Jewish beliefs in private. But this became an issue, and it led to the Inquisition. If someone thought that maybe you weren't behaving the way you ought to, that maybe you were doing things that you shouldn't be doing at home, then you could be brought before the Inquisition to be explained to, for someone to tell you what you were doing wrong so that you could straighten up and fly right. It went a little bit beyond that. You know a little bit about the Inquisition like I do and know that that was not a good thing. The second act in Isabella's life that people are not very tolerant of today was her lack of tolerance of the people of the Islamic faith. She and Ferdinand, from about 1482 to 1492, set out on a war to rid the Iberian Peninsula of Muslims. And that's what found them here in October of 1492. It was a battle against the Muslims, and finally Ferdinand defeated the Muslims and ran the Sultan from Granada out of the country. The Muslims were allowed to live here for a while longer. I don't remember exactly how long before they too were forced out. And Jews were forced out because they wanted this hegemonous country where everybody was Catholic. Because of these efforts through the Inquisition and the Reconquista, which is the running out of the Muslims, they were named the most Catholic monarchs. And there is a street here in Granada that is called Calle de los Reyes Católicos, the Catholic monarchs. This is where Isabella approved Columbus's voyage. She agreed to fund it. I think I've already said that. She actually was buried here at the Alhambra first, and then they moved her body to a specific chapel called the Royal Chapel here in Granada, and that is where she and Ferdinand are today. Tomorrow we're going to go and see that and see where Isabella and Ferdinand are at rest. I feel like I've been a little bit scattered today, a little bit crazy. Maybe I am. But I've had a great time here seeing these sites, seeing where Isabella actually was, because to me that's a very important thing. It helps me to put things into context in my mind. So I hope that you have enjoyed learning a little bit about her, about this most Catholic monarch. And I hope that next Thursday you will join me again when I will be talking to you about another wonderfully important Spanish woman, Teresa. And that's probably going to be way early before you're up and from the airport. I hope you have a great week and a great weekend, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.